Hey y'all, good morning. Hope you're doing well. Coach Chase from Top Line Running here. I want to talk about something today. And this is something I kind of sneak it in here and there on my videos here on TikTok. And I want to kind of go in a little greater detail. I want to elaborate on this. I'm going to talk about mastering the basic fundamental things in training, racing, and so on as an athlete, especially cross country, track, and roads. But right now we're in cross country season. Okay. So there are certain things that apply now that don't necessarily apply during the spring, during track, or don't apply on the roads, and so on and so forth. So I just want to talk about that stuff. And again, if you're a coach or an athlete, your first time here, welcome. If you want to continue to learn, you want to continue to have a voice, have your voice heard, answer questions, and have a coach that can be a resource for you, you can answer questions along the way. Please do two things. If you enjoy the content enough, hit that like button. Okay. And if you join enough to come back and like button, and please subscribe to the channel. Okay. It's a tremendous blessing to know that you find this channel valuable and helpful. It means the world, and I thank you for it. And again, turn on your notifications if you do subscribe. That way you'll never miss anything. When I go live, you'll know when I go live. And you can always ask questions along the way. Okay, for those that are in here now, hello, good morning. My email is blackbeltrunningcoach@gmail.com. Again, blackbeltrunningcoach@gmail.com. You can reach out to me. I answer emails on a regular basis. If you have any questions along the way, put them in the comments section while we're live. I'm more than happy to answer them. Okay, now, mastering the basics. A couple things I want to talk about. Mastering the most basic things, the non-sexy things, help do what? They help you create good habits, right? And you essentially have two options: good habits or not so good habits. And the most successful people I found in this sport tend to be the ones that are consistent with good habits. And that's training, recovery, racing, all that type of stuff. Time management. And I bring up time management. I use this as example one. If you're a high school senior, right, and you plan on running in college, there are a couple things that you're going to need to adjust to the first year. Okay. Number one, you're probably going to be training with faster people. A lot of folks that are number one on their team in cross country in high school could be number 4, number 5, number 10 in college. You're just going to be surrounded by a higher caliber of athletes most of the time. Okay. So you're going to have to get used to what? Harder training, longer runs, longer workouts, because you're going to be training for longer races, particularly in cross country. Right? The girls go from 5K to 6K. The boys go from 5K to 8K, and in cases 10K. Right? So you have to factor that into the training. Now, what happens in college? You don't race as much in college, especially in cross country. So it makes it easier to factor in the training. But other things happen too, right? And sticking to the basics. When I say time management, one of the things that you don't have in college that you do have in high school is what? A consistent schedule of classes. Let's just say you're in class from 8 to 3 or whatever it might be. And then practice time is after that. And again, folks, let me know that you're here so I can say hello. And if you have any questions, put them right in the comment section. Okay. So there is not a consistent component of your classes. You have to build your classes around your training in college. Right. So, and sometimes that's hard, particularly in the beginning. You don't have somebody to help you register for your classes. In college, sometimes you try to register and it's too late. But in some cases, as an athlete, you might be amongst the first people in line to register for your classes, so that can help. But managing your time effectively so you can fit in the training is really, really key. That way you can get ahead of things like your homework, you're studying for exams. That way you're not having to worry about, oh my God, I have a test tomorrow. I haven't even started studying yet. We have a hard workout tomorrow. I have a race tomorrow, whatever. Haven't even prepared yet. This way you can get ahead of this type of stuff like this. And time management is one of the things that'll make your life a heck of a lot easier in college. A heck of a lot easier, right? Coaches and athletes. And if you're a coach, I encourage you to speak to your athletes about this. Put them in a position to get ahead always. This is a good habit to practice. It's one of the most basic things, okay? And I, again, can't emphasize this enough. Now, let's pivot over to training, okay? Speed development, number one. This is one of the most basic things. If you look at my training programs on this channel, whether it be summer-based training programs for high school or college, or middle distance programs or distance programs, there is speed development everywhere in it, right? The only time you don't see speed development is the first 4 weeks of summer-based training when you're getting up to your goal mileage. And once you level off, Then I start to incorporate some basic speed development. And even if you just do basic speed development for the last 8 weeks of summer, strides twice per week, 5 times a 50-meter on an uphill on, let's say, a Tuesday, 5 times 100 meters on a flat on a Friday, right? You do that for 8 straight weeks, you'd be shocked at how much leg speed you'll develop, how much leg turnover you develop, okay? And these are things you do after runs, right? Because it's when you're going to need to deploy your speed at the end of races, right? So, and then it makes it easier to also transition into the workouts. Because a lot of folks I speak to, there's a lot of super hard interval workouts and easy runs and nothing in between. Well, what happened to the steady runs? What happened to the other things, the long runs? What happened to tempo runs? What happened to VO2 max? We'll get into this as well, okay? So there's got to be, the more you have a balance in your training program, the more versatile you're going to be, the more versatile your athletes are going to be, right? It's easier to double. Let's just say you run a 2 mile, you want to come back and run a 4x8, which is a different application of leg speed, right? But the more balanced your training program is, easier it is to do that, right? So, or like something like I used to do, run a 3K and come back. And I was the 4th leg on the 4x4 in college, on my college team, and as a distance runner. And it just was what it is. Had guys on my team running 46 and 47s. I was a slow guy at a 49 point. Okay. And then, but that was just the way it is. But it came in handy in my races, right? Family at Tech, good morning. Question. Anytime there's a question, I always answer them. My son's in 8th grade. He's a 1745 for the 5K. I was wondering how good he is for his age in school grade. Where do you find information? Well, this is a good question too, Family Tech. 1745, in my opinion, as an 8th grade, that's a pretty solid start. Now, as a middle schooler, it's important to also stick with the basics, right? He's young, doesn't need to have high volume, and you're going to train. If he plans on running in high school, you want to set him up to make sure that he's enjoying what he's doing first, so that when a time comes to include harder bouts of training, he's mentally in the game, mentally focused on, and mentally willing to commit to that type of stuff. Because there is going to be a point where people are going to need to buy into that, okay, and understand this is where, and communicating with coaches is important, right? You have to do a consistent amount of hard work, not insane work all the time. There'll be times you have to go to the well, sure, but that's not all the time. Say there was a balance in the training that needs to take place. And again, if your son's in 8th grade, right now, if I can encourage anything, it would be to just make sure he's enjoying it, make sure he's having fun, keep the volume low, okay? Don't race him too much, okay? And then make it easier to transition, because transitioning, and I just talked about transitioning from high school to college. Well, transitioning from middle school to high school, there's also a little bit of a transition. Now, it's a little bit different than it is going up to college, because the race distance aren't significantly increasing. A mile's still a mile, right? 2 miles still a 2 mile. Cross country, you might go from 3K or 2 miles to 5K over time. So, but information on that, it really depends on what your son is doing now. Again, it's up to coaches to identify what his strengths and weaknesses are, so that they can customize in areas what's most applicable to him. Because what works for your son may not work for someone else's son, right? So there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all training program. It just doesn't exist, okay? And I can't speak for all coaches, but I am speaking from 2 decades plus experience, okay, as a former competitive runner and a coach who have competed and coached at high school, college, and post-college at a high level, okay? So I want to be as valuable as I possibly can as a resource. I'm also coming from an exercise physiology standpoint. I worked with the Whartons, the guys that founded the Active Isolated Stretching Rope Stretch. These guys are the best in the world. I've been fortunate enough to learn directly from them. They certified me in 1998. So over 25 years, I've been doing active isolated flexibility. Now I'll get into that in a minute too, because it boils down into part of the basics. Okay. And so I'm here to help people run fast, but I'm also here to keep them healthy while they do it, so they can continue to adapt. And there's an adaptation that needs to take place. Okay. You have to adapt to either more intensity in your training or more volume in your training, one or the other. I would not encourage folks to try to adapt to both at the same time, one or the other, okay? And periodization is what is basically the philosophy is, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks, 21 to 28 days to adapt to a change or an increase in stimulus in the training. The same thing applies as you go down, peaking, right? Tapering. You don't need to drop volume and increase intensity every single week for a bunch of weeks. You don't need to do that. You can drop volume and stay there for a week so that the athletes can adapt to the volume while they're continuing to ramp up the intensity at that point with the volume staying the same. There's an adaptation period that goes up, adaptation period that comes down. Okay? And these are also some of the basics. If you get these things down as a coach and an athlete, you're going to be in a better position to be successful. And so this little stuff like this that is important to talk about. This is why I go live. This is why I answer questions, right? Because I want you to have a thorough understanding of what we're talking about. And it's also not always what you do. It's sometimes why you do it. It's also when you're doing it. They all matter, right? They're all part of the puzzle. I've had people ask me recently, why are my legs so dead? I'm racing on Saturdays. My legs are dead. I ask them, okay, what's your week look like? Well, my hardest workout of the week is Thursday. Well, there you go. Your hardest workout of the week is Thursday. Your legs are dead Saturday. It's not a surprise. The workout's still in your legs. The hardest workout of the week should be probably Tuesday. Okay? That way you have 3 days of recovery before a race. You can even do some light speed work on Thursday. It really depends on what your training philosophy is. And for those that have seen mine, on a non-race week, I do Tuesday, Friday workouts, and a long run Saturday. On a race week, I do Tuesday workout, some light speed after a run Thursday, then a race on Saturday. Okay? And I'm consistent about it. And I do not believe in over-racing athletes. There's a lot you can gain in training that you cannot gain in a race, especially if you're going to race and just use it as a workout. How helpful is that? It really isn't. Okay? And again, I say this a lot too, and some coaches may get upset and might not agree with me, but I'm not interested in being a dual meet champion in September. Okay? I'm interested in getting athletes to run their fastest in October and November when it counts the most. Right? And what has to happen along the way to put them in a position to do that. This is not about me. This is about you. Okay? I do online coaching. Yes, I do. I do online coaching. Family Tech. You can reach out to me. This is my email. I'm gonna put it in. I'm gonna put it in the. I'll put it on screen here. Hold on a second. Here we go. This is my email address. blackbeltrunningcoach@gmail.com. Just started coaching at a high school this last August, Rich. Kids had low volume in summer training. What can I do now in training to improve their aerobic capabilities? Well, you slowly increase their volume. And I would not increase their volume by more than 5 miles per week. Okay? And you increase by, let's just say they're at 25 miles a week. You go to 30. You stay there for about 3 to 4 weeks. Okay? And what you do in that increased volume is what's going to put them in a position to improve their aerobic capabilities. And Rich, give me, if you can, if you're willing to, give me some insight. What does a week of training look like for your athletes right now? Okay, you can either email me with that email address or you can put it in the comments. Up to you. I will get back to you either way. Okay? And because it also helps knowing what training looks like so that I can give insight into how we can make it better. Right? So, low topic. Morgan. What's up, Morgan? Give me a suggestion on a VO2 workout today. 5 times a K, 2 times 8. When's your next race, Morgan? Easy mileage day, 4 to 6 miles Monday. Okay, keep going, Rich. And this is high school, okay. Two times 8, 16, 2 times 8. When's your next race, Morgan? We have no race this Saturday, but we do have 600-minute time. So I'd probably do the longer stuff. I do 5 times a K for like a 3-minute recovery. You try to run at that 5K pace. That'd probably be a more applicable workout than the shorter stuff, which could sap the legs a little bit if you're going to do a 1600-minute time trial. So I would do the longer stuff, which would be at a slower pace. Tuesday aerobic day. 2 times 2K, 2 times 1K, 2 times 600 threshold. 6K. 7 kilometers worth of threshold. Okay. Wednesday, easy day of mileage. Okay. Keep going. Keep going, Rich. Does that answer your question, Morgan? Okay, good. If you do a time trial of a mile, I would do the longer reps. Thursday, speed day. Okay. Friday easy mileage. Okay. And when you say threshold, Rich, Saturday meter off. Okay. What about Sunday, Rich? What about Sunday? Sunday long run. Okay. When you say when you do your threshold, Rich, on Tuesday, is that the same for freshman, sophomore, junior, senior? And how much recovery do you give them in between the reps of threshold? 6 to 10 miles depending on the athlete. I don't know if you've taken a look at my mileage templates, Rich. I mean, they may give you some insight into how to customize your mileage too. I have it all broken down on this channel, but essentially, just to keep it simple, I generally do 5 miles. I try to get to 5 miles a day for freshmen, 6 a day for sophomores, 7 a day for juniors, 8 a day for seniors. Right? I have an off day every Sunday for my freshmen. That's just me though. So sophomores. This is when I start alternating. So let's say you get to 30 miles a week as a freshman. Sophomores, you average 6 miles a day, so you can go 36 one week, 42 the next week. But it's the same average per mile per day, right, as a soph, but you're getting a day off every other week. As a junior, you go up to 7. You're going to get 42 in the 6 days and 49 in the 7 days, alternating an off day every other week. And as a senior, 8 miles. Again, you can modify this as you see fit, but it just goes a progression. You're not going more than 7 miles in a week at any point in time, right? So, and with 8, it's 48 miles in 6 days, 56 in 7 days. Varsity, I run at 15, 20 seconds above race pace. JV, I run slower. 15, that's faster than threshold, Rich. That's I would encourage you, take a look at if you have any idea of what your athletes can run in a mile right now. What I would encourage you to do if you're not racing is test them on the track in a mile. And that way you can set their training paces for threshold and tempo runs and stuff like that. It will go a long way to have your athletes training at the right paces. This is when you can tighten. This is one of the things that can help you tighten the gap for your top 5, 1 through 5, or your 1 through 7 in cross country. Right? You can tighten the gap from 90 seconds to 60 seconds, 60 seconds down to 30 seconds over time to make sure everybody's training at the right paces. Because if you have people just doing that at a certain place above race pace, because let's just say race pace is 5 minutes per mile. Now let's say 5:30 per mile. Threshold pace would be at 5:50 per mile. That might be a little fast, a little bit fast. Okay, and how much rest are you given with the threshold as well? How much rest? And why JV runs slower? I want to get as much understanding as I possibly can, Rich, into what you. And is it working? Is the other question. Is it working? And Thursday, and if I can ask you again, what's your speed on Thursday? 3 minutes rest in between 2Ks, okay. This is probably closer to the VO2 max than threshold, pure threshold. Because threshold, you essentially slow things down, but you cut the rest to a minute in between. Something in that area. Now let's just say, like, Rich, what's your fastest athlete? If I could just ask you for a mile, I'm going to do a calculation for you here, a live time. Put this here. Let's see here. Speed on usually a mile. Mix of 3s, 4s, 3s. Strides 8% max velocity. Okay. And how are their legs on Saturday when they're racing? Are their legs? So your fastest runs are 4:20. Okay. I'm gonna plug this in for 1 second. What pace is your athlete running those 2Ks in? And are they doing tempo runs as well is my question. Okay. So far they've been racing well. Okay, good. Well, if you're not doing like traditional threshold, that's something you can go over distance with. Okay. Tempo runs, some tempo runs once more. What pace is your 420 miler? What pace is your 420 miler running the tempos in? And what is his? What is he running for cross country? Is he in the 15s for his cross country races, or close to it for a 5K? See, these are good. These are good questions. This is why I like to go live, so we can get some insight. We can kind of dive into this now. I will get back to the basics. 16 flat 5K. Okay, on a flat course. Two, and you have two in that range. Okay, good. So if they're doing tempos, what pace are they running tempos in? Those two at least. And how long are they doing tempos for? Let's see. Flat fast course. Okay. So you still have you probably have about 40 seconds of improvement available to you. 40 to 50 seconds of improvement on a flat fast course based on the 420. Okay, so just for those two folks, 420s, the tempo run pace for that range is about 522 to 525 per mile. If you can get them down to that, then that's going to help them drop quite a bit of time in the 5K. Okay, for no more than 20 minutes or 4 miles. So that's a good pace to do for a 420 miler. 522 to 525 per mile. Okay, that's a good pace. And if you feel it might be too hard, you can break it into pieces. And I have things about ways of building towards 20 minutes at tempo consecutively. You can even start. You can do 2 times a 2 mile first at 522 to 525. Give them 2 minutes in between. If they handle that well, then you try to put it together afterward. Okay, just a thought. That then help them drop time in the 2 mile too, as well as the 5K. Thought an easy pace for long runs, 17:45, 6 miles at 8 minutes per mile. Family Tech. Take a look at. I have videos on this channel. If you go to the live sections, the live stream, the live segment of this channel, I have broken down paces for if you're running 17:45, you're running 18 minutes, and so on and so forth. What your capabilities are for 3K, the mile, and so on, and what your training pace should be for everything. I encourage you to take a look at that right now. I don't have it in front of me right now, Family Tech. I don't want to lead you the wrong way, but 17:45, looking at about 540 per mile. Yeah, easy runs. Yeah, 8 minutes, getting down to 7 minutes, and so on, somewhere around there. Yeah, easy runs getting down to 7:15. Probably not that far, Rich, but I hope you find, and let me know what your thoughts are on Rich, because the tempo run at the right pace based on what you run for the mile. And again, take a look at my lives as well. I encourage you to do that too, Rich, because I have it broken down from 8 minutes all the way down to 4 minutes. Every 20 seconds, or 8 minutes, 7:40, 7:20, 7 minutes, all the way down to 4 minutes, like I said. What your capabilities are for 3K, 5K based on the mile, as well as 800 and 400, okay? And have another video that talks about what your training paces should be for everything. Okay, easy runs, steady runs, critical velocity, threshold, tempo, all that type of stuff. Where based on where I have a 420 video. I have one that talks about in that training paces, and that 420 is one of the options. So you'll see where are we here, and are we closer to the shorter stuff than we are the longer stuff? If you are, that's a sign to work on tempos and VO2 max. If you're closer to the longer stuff than the shorter stuff, that's a sign to work on speed development, right? The key is to get as balanced as you possibly can based on what your mile projection is. Recommendations for cross training have been elliptical for athletes. Yeah, coming back from injury, bike. It depends on where the injury is. Bike, if you have access to a pool, no impact. I can do pool running, swimming and pool running. Elliptical, it depends on if you have a hip flexor injury, right? Ellipticals is a little bit of a different impact than the bike. So, but cross training is a good way of improving their fitness by minimizing the impact. So, shin splints mostly, bike, and strengthening foot and ankle strengthening exercises to help strengthen the muscles that protect the shin. I've got videos on that too on this channel too. So definitely, I encourage you to take a look at all these videos. It's the small things like this that can go a long way to help reduce the shin splint problems, reduce other things like this. When I talk about mastering the basic stuff, it's things like this. Okay, definitely look at them, Rich. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me. My email is in here. Okay, now back to this stuff as well. Talking about basic and creating good habits, speed development, right? Speed development makes it easier to transition to what? The harder workouts without having to go doing hard workouts, going from nothing to hard workouts and being super sore. Speed development helps that transition. This is why I talk about transitional 200s in a workout. If you're doing a tempo run and the goal is 520 per mile, I'll use this as an example, Rich, right? Do a couple of 200s before that. 2 to 3 times 200. Try to run 39 or 40 to lock into the pace before the workout starts. That way you're not having to use a bunch of the workout to find the pace. This puts you 2 steps ahead of the game. If you do a mile repeats at 5 minutes per mile, you do some 200s at 37. Lock in, find the pace you're looking to run for the workout before the workout starts. Okay? That way you can take advantage of the 100% of the workout. Okay, so back to speed development again. Okay, and my other one I want to talk about warm-up routines and recovery routines. Are your warm-up routines similar on workout day than they are on race day? This is where I talk a lot of folks get in trouble here with stuff. And again, I understand with track it's a little bit different. Sometimes you warm up and then you're sitting forever because you're in the 8th heat of something and you go to a track meet. I'm from the East Coast, so sometimes you go to track meets and they go from fast to slow one week, and then they go from slow to fast the next week, and you have no idea until you get there, which kind of stinks, right? So if you have the ability to have another athlete sit there so your athlete who's racing can stay loose, I encourage you to take advantage of that, right? But in cross country, you basically go from warming up to getting ready to race, right? And is the sequence the same? What do I mean? Well, cross country is the only season where you're training outdoors where the weather gets colder. Okay? Outdoor track, it gets warmer as the season progresses. Okay? And a lot of folks, and I come across a lot of folks who do a warm-up jog and then they'll do static stretching outside in the cold, which makes it difficult to keep the body loose and warm, right? To keep the muscles fired up. And then they're going to try and do some drills and strides and so on, and then you wonder why the legs might be out of rhythm. I'm not saying it's going to happen for everybody, but more often than not, I'm hearing that this is happening. This is why sequentially what you do is important. This is why I ask people to take a look at my video, my active isolated stretching video. You can do an active stretch first, and then your warm-up jog, okay, and then your drills and strides. Have a consistent amount of time between your warm-up jog and the race on workout day than it is on race day. And you do that as consistently as you possibly can, so that you're not basically warming up, doing drills and strides, and then 20 minutes later you're working out, or waiting an hour after your warm-up jog on race day, especially when the weather's getting cold. Okay, this can be counterproductive. These are the little things, the consistent things that I encourage folks to consider doing. Okay, also fueling afterward. Okay, fueling before, easily digestible carbohydrates. Something that's just going to give you energy. Post-workout, post-run, post-race, you cool down, obviously, and you do a little bit of stretching if you can. Hydrate, but get something in your body that has some protein in it. Whether it's a banana protein bar, whatever it might be, chocolate milk, something that's going to help with recovery, muscle repair afterward. Okay, the sequence is important. Okay? Last thing you want to have is food sitting in your stomach on race day before the race, because that'll just wreak havoc on your bowels. We don't want to do that, right? But another thing I encourage folks to do is feel good after the races. And if you run a PB, this is another thing. And this is from exercise physiology speaking here. And I learned this at the USATF school too, from coaching school. Um, if you run a big PB on Saturday, okay, give it a couple extra days before your next workout. Okay, just because you run Tuesday, Friday every week or whatever, you run a huge PB on a Saturday, then maybe you don't work out that Tuesday, or maybe do something different, something shorter, just to get some rhythm in the legs. It takes longer to recover from a big PB in a race than it does from not a big PB in a race. So factoring in what you do after a big race is important. And what you do afterward can help you put you in a position to sustain a longer bout of peak running. Doing the right things after a peak race is important. More isn't always better. Okay, the right things are better more than more is. And this happens more often than not. I can't emphasize this enough. Okay, so the sequence in your warm-up routine, is it consistent? And is your cool down routine, recovery routine, consistent on workout day and race day? That's another little thing. And folks that develop a consistent good habit in this area tend to be the more successful folks. Okay, and this translates from high school up to college. If you're practicing good habits going into college, you are 2 steps ahead of the game. It's easy to be intimidated as a freshman because you have a lot of things you have to get used to. But if you're having good habits like time management or warm-up routine, stretching, cool down, stuff like that, fueling, you're already ahead of the game. You're not a deer in headlights. Okay, this is the stuff that, again, I don't hear a lot of people talking about. Right? A lot of people talk about workouts. Workouts is great. I've got hundreds of videos on workouts, but it's this type of stuff that can make the workouts more beneficial. Okay? There's not one workout that works the same way for everybody. This is where individualization has to take place in the workouts. That way you have everybody on the starting line running 6 times a K, and everybody's starting at the same time again, right? Well, guess what? The slower people are going to get less recovery time than the faster people. The fast people are going to get more recovery time. So is it applicable to the same for everybody? No, it's not. This is where training groups is important. Splitting them up if you can. Making sure everybody's training with the right people. Your 420 milers are going to recover differently than your 5-minute milers. Right? Sometimes your 5-minute milers might be able to do a 420 workout. That doesn't mean they're ready to run 420. They were going to recover a completely different way than your 420 milers do it. Okay, so this is the type of stuff that's really, really important to consider as a coach and as an athlete. Okay, and I'd rather you not learn the hard way. The more you learn, the more you know, the better off you're going to be to make good decisions. Okay, so again, consistency and all that stuff. And again, the last one I wanted to talk about is something that we've already kind of talked about here with Rich. I've had folks ask me recently, why is my mile good, but my 5K is so much slower? That's why I ask, are you doing tempo runs? Are you doing VO2 max and threshold stuff, right? This is the type of stuff that can, if you factor this into your training, you can see big gains, okay? Generally, rule of thumb, it varies for athlete, but there's essentially a 15 seconds per mile differential, right? So per mile. So if you're running a 5-minute mile, then 5:15 or so, 5:20 max per mile for 2 miles, right? And then you bump it up to 5:30 per mile for 5K. So if you're on a 5-minute mile, you should be able to run about a low 17 for a 5K. Okay, if you're 4:30, you should be able to run 4:45-ish or right around there per mile for 3K or 2 miles, right? And 5 minutes per mile for 5K, and so on, as a 4:30 miler. And again, but what's going to keep you in that range? Tempo runs, threshold running, speed development, doing the right things at the right time. Like I said, if you haven't heard, it's not always what you do, it's also why you're doing it and when you're doing it. Consistency is important, okay? But at the same time, so is frequency, so is sequence when you're doing it. This is why it's important, and I'm speaking from experience. I can't speak for all of the coaches. It's important to have a good amount of recovery in between workouts, especially hard ones. If you're doing a harder, let's just say you're not racing that week, so you're going to do 2 hard workouts. Making sure there's ample recovery. That's why I do Tuesday, Friday workouts on a non-race week, and I do a Saturday long run, okay, and then Sunday easier off. That way, what? You're recovering at least 2 days after the long run, Sunday and Monday, for a Tuesday workout. Then Tuesday, Friday, you're recovering at least Wednesday and Thursday in between workouts. That way, if on a race week, if you do your hard workout Tuesday, you have 3 days of recovery. If you do a little bit of light speed on Thursday after a run, it doesn't take anything away from your race on Saturday. So the sequence in which you do stuff is important. And these are the little things that are the basic fundamentals that can really serve you a long way as a coach and an athlete. Okay, if anybody in there has any questions, please put them in the comments. I thank you for the questions that you brought so far, Rich and Tech, and appreciate all these folks. Really. These are good questions. And again, sometimes a question leads to 3 questions. That's good. That's why it's important for me to have an open dialogue with athletes and coaches so that you can continue to learn, right? And this is why I give my email address. You know, as much as I want to call Marcus O'Sullivan, he's not going to pick up the phone anytime I call him. Or Mike Smith from Northern Arizona, or Diljit Taylor from BYU, some of the best coaches in the entire world. They're busy, right? And we might have a similar philosophy. We might train athletes similarly, but a lot of the folks, I mean, John McDonald, when he was at Arkansas, the late John McDonald, may he rest in peace, but he's a hard man to get a hold of. He is. So are the coaches from Oregon. Right? Some of the big time coaches, they're hard to reach. So I want to make sure I want athletes and coaches to know they have a resource that's available to them to be helpful. What's my feeling about tempo kids during early meets? What do you mean, Rich? Using a race as a tempo? Using a race as or tempoing a race, I should say. And are you talking about racing twice per week, Rich? Or just using an early season race kind of as a tempo effort and getting progressively faster throughout the season? Because I have folks that race twice per week and they'll use a second race as a tempo run. I ask them why. When it's particularly, are you doing the right paces for the tempo? Right? Are you going to travel there basically to not get much benefit out of a race in the midweek race where you could have stayed home and done a good workout, which would have set you up better later on in the season? And those are the questions I ask, Rich. And I'm not asking you that, but like what I like to do essentially is I like to test my athletes' fitness in the beginning. So you can start at tempo and I get progressively faster. Can my athletes, and it really depends on the course too, can they finish the last mile strong? I want you to run the hell out of that last mile. Can you do that? And we'll see who can, we'll see who can't, right? So, yeah, if you're racing every Saturday, that's a different thing than as opposed to racing twice per week. I don't race my athletes twice per week, and I never will. Okay, every week is okay, but even if I had enough athletes and enough depth on my team, I would not race everybody every week. I would sit people on certain weeks so they can get bigger blocks of training in. The kids that I know that can potentially make states and nationals, I race them less frequently because I want them to be at their best when it counts the most. Sometimes, and I've noticed this too, particularly of athletes that race more than once per week, they're running their best races of the season 4 to 5 to 6 weeks too early. And then they're fried come championship season. And I ask those coaches, why are we doing that? Why? Right? And I don't pull punches either, but Rich, like I'm not interested in being a dual meet champion in September. I have no interest in that. Okay, I want my athletes to go to states. I want my athletes to go to nationals and do that type of stuff, win championships, right? If you're racing every week, it makes sense to moderate their effort in the beginning of the season. But if it's applicable too, yeah, you want them to peak at the right time. And then I also could invite you to, or I encourage you to consider not racing them every single weekend, because there are athletes that can't help themselves. They're very competitive by nature, and I get it. okay? And they'll go out there and put forth a hard effort. I'd rather some of the athletes get a harder workout or a good long run that weekend instead of a race environment. Then we can go back home without the pressure of racing. Okay, come and do your practice on Saturday. You'll be done. You'll be home and way earlier than you were having gone and traveled for a race. You know what I mean? But it is a justifiable concern. Racing kids every week can affect their ability to peak at the right time. Racing twice per week is definitely going to affect their ability to peak at the right time. Right? But that is a good question. It's a justifiable, and I'm glad you brought that up because some other folks asked me the same thing. So, and it's good to have coaches that express those concerns because if let's say a 12-week season, right? That's 12 races, or you have a 10-week season, 10 races. That's a lot of racing, right? And it makes it hard to fit in the type of training that you need to fit in to make them, get them ready to run their best races. That's why, that's why I'm more in favor of racing maybe every other week. That way we can do some things in training on a non-race week that they wouldn't normally do. You can really go over distance with threshold and some other things, right? And also, which just compounds their fitness, sets them up later for track, right? So, if that makes sense. And again, like indoor track is the longest season. So, and I think bigger blocks of training along the way are helpful for athletes who don't necessarily race as much. So, but that's a very good question, Rich. Very good question. Came with a schedule already set. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the schedule's already set. I mean, if if you stick with it, then I would, I would even go, like just say you have a couple of 420 athletes, but you have a couple of like 440 athletes or 450 athletes, and you want them to progress. I'll even have my 420s try to pace my 440s and 450s one race, and use that as a little bit of a less effort race because I want my 1 and 2 to help my 3 and 4, right, on a race weekend. Let other people think, oh man, are they hurt? I don't care what other people think. I'm doing what I need to do to get the rest of my team ready. Because what you 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 do is really going to help what the 1, 2 does, right? So I've done that before. I've used my top athletes to kind of use a little bit of a different effort and pace some of their teammates along. And that way you have a bunch of athletes can come in together, right? And create a more pack running environment. So it's just a thought, Rich, but yeah, I agree too. That's a lot of meets. It is a lot of meets. But I would also sit certain people. I would bring my 1, 3, 5, 7 1 week, and I would bring my 2, 4, 6 the following week, and so on and so forth, and then JV and whatever else. I would alternate them, right? Targeting at 4 athletes in a 16-minute range by the time go to milestone. Okay, that's a good target. Are your 2 other athletes in the 430 to 440 range? 440 should get them in the 16-minute range, or close to a low 16 range. 430 should get them in the high 15 range. 17-minute range. So those folks, I'd be working on tempos at the right pace. So those are 440 athletes. Those are the folks that you want to do tempos at 540 per mile pace. About a minute. So they're running 450-ish per mile. So I'd be doing 550 per mile on the tempos for them. So that's pretty much applicable to it right now. If they're in a 17-minute range at 450, that's pretty much on par. So getting them down to the 440s in area, which would help get them in the 16s, that's definitely a doable thing here. So I would be doing some stuff. I'd be doing some tempo runs. And even if you did, you can kind of mix it up as well. Right? You're welcome, Tech. Appreciate any time, Tech, man. And again, you could do threshold stuff too over a rolling course. It really depends on what your courses that you run are as well. I'd simulate if you're running, if the races you want them to be running these times are in rolling courses, I would be doing those workouts over rolling courses. You want them to run these races on the flats, I'd be doing some stuff on the flats. Simulate in training what you want to happen in the race as often as you possibly can, right? So, and then if you're not doing speed on the back end of a tempo, let's just say you do a 20-minute tempo, take 5 minutes, and then you do a couple of 200s at mile pace, 8 intermediate pace on the back end. Teaches them how to turn over when they're already fatigued after a tempo run, right? They don't need to do a lot, okay? But those 450s per mile, folks, those are good. Those are good folks to get down to the 440. You can get them in the 440s. Then you're looking in the 16s there as well. And the tempos are what's going to help them get down from 17-minute range into the mid 16s. Those tempos, right? 550 per mile, getting towards 20 minutes. If they can't do, you like I said, do 2 times 10 minutes, and then do 20 minutes. So do 2 times 2 miles, and then do 4 miles, right? So those are the types of things. And then threshold work, 6 times a K at threshold pace, which is essentially 8 to 10 seconds faster per mile than your tempos. So if they're running tempo runs at 550, they're doing threshold stuff at 540 pace, 1 minute recovery after each rep. Tempos a week, no more. If I would even alternate, I would do, let's just say Tuesday workout. Let's say they're racing Saturday. I would do a tempo one week, then threshold work the following week, then critical velocity the third week, and then repeat that cycle. Okay, they don't need more than one of those types of workouts per week. Those are all VO2 max sessions. Tempos and thresholds are initial VO2 max. 3K pace and 5K pace is race specific VO2 max, right? I would do one of those workouts on Tuesday, and then just some light speed. Let's just say you do a couple of 300s at 3K pace or down to mile pace after a run on Thursday, right? Just to put a little bit of a zip in their legs. It won't take anything away from Saturday's race, but that's how you can cycle the training too and be consistent about it. You do tempo, threshold, critical velocity, and then go back and do it again. Are they recovering better? That's one of the things you can see. Okay, is the first time you do tempo is 2 times 10 minutes. Then the next time I come around, can they do 20 minutes consecutively? Right? If they recovered well the first time they ran the 2 times 10 minutes. These are all applicable ways of tracking their training in a way that makes it tangible for you as a coach to know when it's time to modify their training, right? And this is why I do those videos. You know, what are my capabilities for 3K and 5K based on what I run for the mile? Okay, and if in order for me to get to them, what training paces do I need to be training at, right? Because like I said, if you're closer to the 4 and the 8 than you are the 3 and the 5, then that's a sign you have to improve your aerobic conditioning. On the flip side, if you're closer to the 3 and the 5 than you are the 4 and the 8, then it's a sign to improve speed development. But everything's got to be progressive along the way. But you're doing good work. You got a couple 420s. That's good work, man. That's good work, coach. It's very good work. So if anybody has any other questions before I wrap it up, I want to thank you all for joining me. Again, these are the types of basic things, right? Speed development, warm-up routines, cool-down routines, right? Recovery routines, time management. These are the types of stuff that can really set you up for success, especially if you're high school wanting to transition to college, and especially if you want to run a college. It's a different environment in college. They give you the syllabus and expect you to be adult about it. There's no hand-holding in college. It's different. Okay. Rich, my pleasure, man. I'm glad I can be helpful. This is why I have this channel, because I don't see many other channels where there's coaches that can actually give tangible feedback to other coaches and athletes in a way that I want to give it to them. Right? I want you to have this is why I go live, because I want you to understand what I'm saying. Right? That way, because one question sometimes leads to 2, sometimes leads to 5, and that's good. That's good. It just shows your eagerness to learn. But if you want to come on, Rich, you and I we can do a face-to-face on the screen to talk about training. I'm happy to do that as well. So anytime you want to do that, and again, you can reach out to me on an email as well. So, but have a great day, everybody. Rich, thank you so much. And again, if you know any other coaches that you feel might benefit from this channel, please share the channel with them. Any other athletes they feel might benefit from this channel, please share it with them. I want to help as many people as I possibly can. And as you know, we're not in this for the money. We don't get paid like Coach K from Duke. and Nick Saban from Alabama. We don't get $10 million a year salaries. We do this because we love the sport. We love to help our athletes. We want to see them run fast. Okay, so you reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to help. So have a great day, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next weekend. Have a good one. Peace.